Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring Midnight: Legacy of Darkness. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, where evil reigns supreme and being good is considered a sin, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about the magic, the villains and the heroes of Midnight. Let's start with the magic. Just as the veil that separates the mortal world from the celestial realm prevents outsiders from returning to their native planes and souls from ascending to their final rest, so too does it prohibit any magical travel to or through other planes of existence. Spells that rely on planar travel or communication, such as contact other plane, etherealness, and teleport, have not been practiced since the Sundering. This isolation from the other planes is just one change to magic and spellcasting in the world of Midnight. Magic is rare and powerful on Aerith, and thus, some spells are not available in this setting, and other new spells exist instead. Magic items are also far rarer in the world of Midnight than they are in other fantasy campaign settings. This is in part because of the rabid desire of Isrador's forces to find, harness, or destroy any item of power they can find. They rightfully believe that magic is one of the few weapons their enemy has that can even the odds against the malign god's greater numbers and more savage minions. Additionally, magic on Aerith is less permanent than it is in other worlds, ebbing and flowing in unseen tides of power. This means that permanent magic items cannot be created simply through the expenditure of vast personal resources and personal energy. In order for an item to be permanently enchanted, its creator must tap into one of the wellsprings of magic called power nexuses. Unfortunately for the forces of good, many of these magical nexuses have been tracked down by the Shadow and fallen under the power of Isrador and his Night Kings. When magic items are crafted, they are typically items of great power and significance, rather than the generic and often disposable tools that fill adventurers' backpacks in other settings. They are unique items that are typically passed down as family heirlooms, gifted to students by their mentors, or offered as rewards for great deeds. Spellcasters in Midnight wield powerful magic, but they also face unique challenges. In the lands controlled by the Night Kings, only the legates and those channelers found by Isrador are permitted to use magic freely. For the conquered peoples of the occupied lands, spellcasting is punishable by death. The legates are charged with tracking down and executing such transgressors, and Isrador has granted them powerful allies in this cause. Legates are always accompanied by strange, preternaturally intelligent animals that seem able to track insurgent spellcasters as a bloodhound tracks wounded prey. Let's talk about the villains of Midnight. The legates are but one of many types of villains that threaten the future of Eredain. The foes and evils of Midnight are legion, and the allies of good are few. More powerful than any other being on Aerith is Isrador. No mere overlord or tyrant of the flesh, Isrador is a god who walks the earth, as far above mortals as humans are above insects. He has more power than any mortal can dream to achieve. Yet Isrador is not omnipotent. Bound as he is in shapeless shadow, he relies on his minions to spread terror and despair, offering them power but relying on their ability to travel the land of Eredain in a way that he cannot. Leading Isrador's minions, and by far the direst enemies of Eredain's heroes, are the 4 Night Kings. These lieutenants of the Shadow are all the more tragic in light of their previous roles as heroes of Eredain. If these brave champions fell to the corrupting whispers of Isrador, who among the mortals of the last age can hope to resist him? Even the greatest heroes of Midnight fear these 4. They are as gods above mortals, and none can hope to stand against them. Despite these overwhelming powers, there are foes whom the heroes of Midnight can and must face. Foremost among them are the legates, the corrupt priests of the Order of Shadow. These are the strongest of Isrador's mortal servants, not least because of the spellcasting abilities the god has granted them. More important than their divine might is their influence over every aspect of conquered Erenland, from the Orc legions to the lives and belongings of common citizens. Legates are entitled to any action, no matter how foul, that serves the agendas of their god. Yet, like the Night Kings, these powerful enemies distract themselves with schemes against their peers. They too jockey for position, backstab and wheedle, and strive to climb the ancient and crumbling edifice of Isrador's favor. Beneath the legates in power, but just as dangerous to the people of Eredain, are the Shadow's savage and relentless armies of orcs. These are not the mindless brutes of other campaign settings, however. Most of the orcs of Midnight are the chosen of Isrador, a fallen people corrupted by the Shadow and raised to fill Isrador's armies. They alone can see and hear the sendings of Isrador each night as they lie in sleep, and they alone have been promised the inheritance of the world. As pointed out, these orcs are very different from other fantasy settings, to the point that some of them can actually break free from Isrador's control. Where there is ignorance, pain, and helplessness, there are those who would prey on the unfortunate and the defenseless. The destruction wrought by Isrador's army as it conquered Erenland has left an economy shattered by war, a people broken by tyrants, and a land stripped of its resources. Under Isrador's rule, crimes include pursuing literacy, practicing magic, helping outlaws. There are other, less easily defined and even less easily defeated foes awaiting characters in Midnight. Hunger and want are everywhere and cannot be cut with any sword. Despair and ignorance creep through the people of Eredain and cannot be banished with a spell or a ritual. Now let's talk about the heroes of Midnight. The legendary heroes of past ages are all dead or corrupted by the Shadow. The lines of Erenland's monarchs are all but ended, and the strength of the allied elves and dwarves has waned. Player character heroes begin their epic journey as inexperienced and desperate fugitives, but they are destined to become Aerith's last great champions. They are often unwelcome and unheralded, for danger follows close behind them, and even the common folk they strive to protect may turn against them. This is an age of fear and despair, and for many, all hope is lost. Despite the odds stacked against them, the heroes of Midnight have a few simple but powerful edges over their foes. The free peoples of Eredain have been tempered by years of want and war. They know their homeland like no others, dependent as they are on the terrain for survival and protection. They have greater natural affinities for certain skills, abilities, and weapons than do peoples from other settings. Whether the way of the horse or the way of the sword, the use of magic or the use of stealth, the peoples of Eredain excel at their chosen paths. Even the orcs, trained and molded by Isrador himself, can be heroes in Midnight, and their strength and martial prowess when turned against their fellows is a dire thing indeed. Although few sword arms join their cause and no gods answer their prayers, Aerith itself gives aid to those who fight Isrador. Aerith's animals have united and grown wise, and they have begun to fight the invaders. From the legates and their hunting beasts, the world hides the power nexuses that grant the ability to create magic items. Charms and herbal concoctions give the champions of good boons that cannot be detected like other magics, and they can be made only by those in tune with the natural world and rhythms of life. Aerith also reaches out to its defenders in a less subtle way. With the power of heroic paths, characters in Midnight can call upon extraordinary supernatural and spell-like abilities previously known only among magical beasts and the like. The Guardian and the Beast-Blooded each bring the fight to the enemy, one with a will and determination as strong as those of any paladin, the other with as much ferocity and viciousness as a ravenous predator. The Dragon-Blooded and the Avenger, the Speaker and the Sunderborn, the Ironborn and Preserver. Each bear gifts that make great heroes even more powerful and empower others to rise up instead of cowering or fleeing. In part because of these heroic paths, in part because of desperation, the heroes of Midnight come from all circumstances and walks of life. They are not adventurers, glory seekers, treasure hunters, and the like. They are normal adults and even children sometimes, whose freedom and way of life have been stolen. They have had to watch their people and families beaten, murdered, tortured, and starved. They have had their weapons, their lore, their homes, their food, everything taken away from them. But there is one thing that the enemy cannot take from the heroes of Midnight. That thing is hope. Of the heroes who stand against the shadow, the humans have both the greatest challenges and the easiest paths. Because of their civil and peaceful ways, all of their lands and cities have been conquered, have been taken, and they are being used as playgrounds for Isrador's orcs, legates, and collaborators. But humans have retaken the ways of lethality, of savagery. They have revived their warrior traditions, and they will fight back with full force. Whereas the humans have a choice between occupation and defiance, the elder peoples have none. The Night Kings hunt the elves and dwarves because they consistently resist the shadow until the last of them falls. The halflings are a decimated people, prized as slaves by the shadow. Then there are the gnomes, among the most heroic of all, who suffer bitter resentment from the other oppressed and besieged peoples, while most do all they can to save them. They need to pretend to serve the shadow, but in secret they are sabotaging the war efforts of the Night Kings. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about the history of Eredane. I have to say, although this is a fictional setting, it is quite educational. Many people in the world have been oppressed by tyrants. They have had their weapons, their resources, everything taken away, in hopes that they do not revolt, in hopes that they do not protect themselves from criminals who will obviously disobey those laws. In Spain, for example, you cannot use herbs that you find on the ground to heal yourself. That is illegal. So many nefarious restrictions have been put upon the people in real life. So as my personal interpretation, I would say that Midnight encourages you to fight back and not to lose hope, not to be controlled by fear, and to remember your warrior ways. It also reminds you that no matter our colors, no matter our shapes and sizes, there is still good within every one of us. You can see this in the orcs, and you can see how the different people, especially the gnomes, are doing their best to combat this evil, even if they have to use their honor as a shield. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending right through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.